Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Re.Con, testimonies from reverts and converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. Before we get to this week's guest, I want to remind you to subscribe, to share, to comment, and to invite those that you know, friends and family that may be reverts or converts. And I would love to chat with them and potentially get them on the show. This week's guest is Tyler Woodcook, who is a good friend of mine and who I've known now for, I think, 3+ years, right, Tyler? Somewhere in there.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. Absolutely.
Yeah, we go to the same parish, and we've shared some great stories over the years. Tyler, first of all, thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you for thinking of me and asking me to be here.
absolutely. Why don't you tell the viewers how your faith journey began?
Uh, sure. I have I like to consider myself, I am a convert to the Catholic Church, but I like to consider myself really a follower and a disciple and a lover of Jesus Christ pretty much my entire life. I came from a different Christian background. I came into the Catholic Church later, I believe 13 years ago is when I went through RCIA and joined the church. But I had several steps along my walk along the way. I actually started, I was born into a family that was part of the Nazarene Church, which is a Protestant denomination. It's where my journey and my relationship with Christ started. Both of my grandfathers were pastors in the Nazarene Church. One of them, my mother's father, was the pastor of the same congregation in a little town called Sterling, Illinois, for 40 years. In fact, you can still go on Google, at least as of this recording, look at Google Maps, and it will zoom in on his parish. And he was there for so long. The parish hall, the event and gathering center, you can still see his name on the side of the building, even though he's passed on years ago. So he was pretty much part of one parish or one congregation, and my father's father traveled around to got different calls and different churches that he was assigned to, which actually brought my family out here to Idaho. He was assigned to Nampa First Church back before I was even born. My parents came out here and fell in love with Idaho. So that was where the church I was raised in. A lot of my faith formation, original formation.
Now,
Like a lot of
for
young
those
people.
for those that do not know, how would you
Sure.
describe the Nazarene denomination, if that's how
And
you
that
would
is
refer to it?
wonderful. I'll try to get my history correct, and apologies to any Nazarenes that are listening that are wrong, that it says this is factually incorrect. But it's a younger denomination. It's been around about a little over 100 years. I
Okay.
remember when they celebrated their centennial, right around the time I was getting married, and we just celebrated our 15th anniversary. So about 115 years ago, and broke off from the Methodist Church. My understanding of church history is the founders were concerned that maybe the Methodists were getting a little too worldly. I think you see some of that. Unfortunately, it just breaks my heart, but you see some of that playing out now. But that's another conversation. But wanted to get back to the spreading of the good word and charity and being there for helping make disciples out of Christ for Christ. They are a smaller, I'd say, a smaller denomination compared to Methodism, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Baptists, and such, but very, very large group here in the Boise, Idaho area. They run the college, the university, Northwest Nazarene over in Nampa. One thing I really my family had several different, I guess, reactions to being raised in the church, and I still have a great fondness for the church. It's where I first came to know Christ. So,
Sure.
How can I not? After high school, college out on my own, like a lot of young people. I would never say I fell away from my faith, but I didn't practice it actively. Just months went by, I did not attend service. Prayed every day, always in the forefront of my mind, God and my relationship with the Almighty. But I wouldn't say I was practicing, doing a very good job practicing. Years later, early 30s, got involved with Methodist Church, wanted to start reigniting my faith walk, my journey with God, and got involved with a Methodist congregation here in town, and kind of took the next couple of steps. And then my journey into the Catholic Church, I met, like a lot of great stories, started with a girl, and I met the woman that would eventually become my wife. And one of my most, I think, remarkable aspects of my journey, I credit two of my pastors, I would say, with my journey that are outside of the church that actually helped bring me to the Catholic Church. First one was my youth counselor when I was in the Nazarene church. Helped keep me involved, helped keep me excited about being part of that, and just a very, very welcoming environment for me. The second one was my pastor with the Methodist Church. And when my wife and I started to realize that we probably had a future together, I was concerned because she is a very faithful and practicing cradle Catholic. And she was very comfortable, with the idea of maybe not me being there yet. I was obviously a lover of Christ. But I can definitely tell you that thinking about the future and what how plausible that might be, our differences with our relationship with God and Christ. It's the closest we ever came to breaking up. I certainly personally did not want to burden her. She came from a family with a lot of different ideas of marriage between two people, and she'd certainly seen wonderfully devoted people who love each other very much, but had seen the struggles that can sometimes happen with people of two different backgrounds or two different belief structures. And we got pretty close to saying, hey, you know what? Maybe the best thing to do is let this person be without me so they can continue their journey. So I went to my pastor and talked to him at the Methodist Church and talked to him about it and said, I really love this girl very much. And I see my future with her, but I don't want to deny her walk with God, or I'm concerned. Is this going to be a concern? And I was fully expecting to hear, Tyler, you're right to think about this. You're right to have these concerns. I've seen this before 100 times in my career. It's not what I got. What I got was just very remarkable. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate it forever. And he said, obviously, as a Methodist pastor, I've made my stand. I've made my bed. Paraphrasing, of course. But he said, this is where I stand. But if you search the history of the church, if you go back to Europe and Rome and the Vatican, and you look at the history of the church and its fathers and the people that brought us to where we are today, he said you can't deny the influence of the church, the history of the Catholic Church, where we've all come from. And he said, and I feel like today, with the Reformation, with Protestantism, the church is a lot like a mirror, in my opinion, and it reflects light. And due to the Protestant split, or the Orthodox split, The mirror has been shattered in a certain way. The family, the body of Christ, those who wish to follow him have been fractured. But each piece of those fractures does reflect some of the light, some of the truth. And he said, before you give up on this relationship, I would invite you to find out if what you believe about this church is what the church actually truly professes. So anyway, he asked me to investigate what I perceived the church to be and why I felt those divisions would doom this relationship and what is possibly the real truth. So I had already really begun my journey and started to fall in love with the church. But we decided to continue with our courtship. We got engaged. We got married. We got married in a Catholic ceremony. And something a little interesting about a lot of Protestant churches have different ideas about this. I mean, as far as I can tell, they all believe in the sacrament of baptism. But the Nazarene church has a slightly different approach. They put great emphasis on it, but what they believe is that this should be a decision. This is your choice to follow. This makes you part of the family of God. So this is a choice that people should make for themselves. So often infants are not baptized. They wait till they get a little older, and then they can make that choice for themselves. So what they will often do is called a dedication, where the parents will essentially have that, I'm giving this child back to God. I'm promising to take care of this child for God. So when I was about ready to get married, I called my grandfather's church. Now, he had passed on for several years, but I called the church in Sterling and I said, this is Tyler. This is who my grandfather is, and I'm getting married. I'm marrying a local gal here, and I need my baptism record. And she said, no problem. It's in a book back there somewhere. Just give me a couple days, and I'll get it for you. So called back a few days later, and she said, Tyler, I'm sorry, there's no baptismal record for you back there. And I said, that's impossible. my cousin and I got baptized on the same day. My grandfather, I mean, I've heard stories about it. I'm sorry, that can't be correct. Can we look again? And she said, well, a few months after you were born, I do have a record of dedication for you and your cousin, but no baptismal record. So I remember chatting with my folks and saying, can you shed some light on this? And she said, oh yeah, it was a dedication. So I discovered I wasn't even baptized, and went through and got married and started thinking, I want to get, this process done. I want to do this for God, and still, involved in my Methodist congregation. We were married and settling into our new life together. And I remember one spring, so we got married in October of 2008. And I remember around 2009, I wanted to get myself baptized. But I felt a hesitancy, and it wasn't because I didn't place internal importance on baptism, but I felt there was something coming. And I just started feeling that something else was going on. And I started reading some books on the church, nothing really from the fathers or anything, nothing too deep or heavy, but just, this is what Catholics believe. It's not a pro, it's not a con, this is a textbook, almost like a super light version of the catechism. And really started realizing a lot of stuff of what I had believed, what I had thought, what I had been taught, maybe not necessarily taught, but just kind of assumed, was not accurate, just like my pastor had talked. And I really became falling in love with the church. I'd fallen in love with this woman, and she had helped bring me to this place. And I remember we went to Mass one night at St. John's, and they had announced next door, after church tonight, in the gymnasium over at St. Joe's. They're having a little career fair, a little activity fair, or anything if you'd like to go over there. And so I said, let's go check that out real quick. And I already knew what I wanted to do when I was over there. I want the genie out of the bottle yet, because I know, once you make that idea of this is what I'm exploring or this is what I'm thinking, you can't go back. So, but when we were over there, I went to the RCIA table, and my wife was just absolutely floored. And she's like, well, are you thinking about doing this? And I said, yes, I am. And at that point, I was, still saying I'm discerning, but I was pretty much certain where I wanted to go or what I was hoping to find at the end of this tunnel. And so I had asked a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, if he would be my sponsor. I needed to have a sponsor because I was pretty certain that I couldn't have her be my sponsor. It'd be a little too close. But had talked to someone, had asked Father Mariusz about this. Is it okay if Tyler's wife is his sponsor? And he said, yes, he's not doing it for her. He has completely independent intentions on this. It's perfectly fine with me. So she became my sponsor. And as I went through the process, about halfway through, I wouldn't say guilt, but I started kind of hitting that, the devil getting in my head. And what are you doing? What's going on? Because I will be very honest that most of the people in my life, most of my family and whatnot, were very excited and very happy about this journey. But there were some people that were not. And really that came from, and this is not the Nazarenes' problem, but growing up in a very restrictive environment, I think they felt like I grew up under the heavy influence of religious doctrine, and you can only, no matter how conservative or restricted or oppressive it might have been, it can't hold a candle to the Catholics. You know what I mean? So I think they thought I was going deeper into that, but that's their own opinion on that. Overwhelmingly, I would say most people have been very, very supportive. But I was starting to have, not doubt, but starting to wonder: this is a permanent life change? If this is the right thing for me? And I was listening to Salt and Light Radio, and I remember exactly where I was. You got those certain things in your life where you remember. I remember where I was when 9/11 happened. Yep. Our parents remember when JFK was shot. I remember, for those of you who are listening who are in the Idaho area, I was driving down Myrtle, and I was heading east into town, and I crossed by the parks, the structures of downtown, and I was crossing over Broadway. And I was listening to Salt and Light, which had become a big habit of mine. I was in outside sales, so I spent a great deal of time in my car during the day. And I was listening, and he was talking to a convert. And he was talking about, I can't quite remember what the lead up to it is, but I remember what he said was, a lot of people feel that joining the church is an abandonment of where they have come before. And there's a lot of feelings about that. And he said, joining the church is not an abandonment of what has come. Joining the church is the next logical step in the journey you've already started. And that just clicked for me. It just made amazing sense to me. That I wasn't, well, this is the link in the chain. First the Nazarenes, then the Methodists, now the Catholics. Who knows what's next? It was like, this is like you hear with Catholics coming back, you're about coming home, or people who join the church say, I've come home. And that just made so much incredible sense at that exact moment. And I knew that I was going to complete RCIA and I was going to join the church. So in April 3rd of 2010, Easter Vigil, I was baptized with my wife behind me. I was baptized by then Bishop Driscoll in St. John's Cathedral. And a couple of years later, we had started having our children. And I'm just absolutely in love with my faith and where it's brought me. And it just feels like all the pieces are there on the other side now. And it just makes so much incredible sense. And so that's my journey. and I've seen some incredible things happen. Someone who is very dear and close to me, a family member I love very much, recently just completed his journey into the church, and I got to be his sponsor this past Easter, and I've seen incredible transformation in their life. It's kind of people you pray for and just hope that one day they can find that connection with the Almighty in the
Yeah.
same way, and just on fire for his faith. And it's just incredible. And I'm so excited to see my kids growing in their faith, um, and is such a vital piece of my wife and our relationship. And um, that's what brought us to it today.
That's
So, and here we
fantastic.
are.
Well, you had a tremendous grace, because it doesn't sound like you didn't have the, just based on what you're sharing, the significant barriers that a lot of people deal with,
Yeah.
in coming home. I can think of a few people, but one in particular where he described that I think he was within 5 Protestant denominations before he considered the Catholic Church. So to him, and a little bit in your story, um, it was just an option of where am I going to go within the Protestant paradigm. The
Sure.
Catholic Church is not an option. And then once out of the blue it became an option, he said that
Hmm.
it's no longer, to your point, like a link. It's the end in a very
Yeah.
beautiful way.
It's
Um,
the final, it's the conclusion of the story,
and what
or
he
the beginning of
said,
the story, but it's the conclusion of the story.
exactly what he said ties to the shards of glass. He was
Hmm.
saying that he was getting bits of the truth at these different
Yeah.
denominations, in like different angles, I guess, of the truth.
Yeah.
And then when he came to the Catholic Church, and I think when it was during RCIA, he said, "Oh, now it makes sense." So I wanted to ask you about that. How was RCIA for
Sure.
you, in connecting some of those dots?
Um, Great. It was a great experience. I had Deacon Tom Dominic taught a lot of it.
Can
I
you
told
say
you
that
about two
again? You
spiritual.
you cut out for a second. Can you say that again?
Sure, sure. Tom Dominic, the Dominics, who we had gotten to know very well already, taught a lot of our classes. Father Mariusz taught a lot of our classes. I mentioned to you earlier, I had a couple of, I have like, I like to think of like 3 real significant spiritual advisors that I grew up with, or got me to this point. Hundreds of people, but if I had to point 3 ones that really stick out, I mentioned my youth pastor in the Nazarene church, this pastor that um, uh, invited me to explore Catholicism, not necessarily for my wife, but for my own journey. It's like,
Sure.
hey, she got you on this path, but maybe it's time to start learning, what you believe, and what is the truth. And then the third one, of course, is Father Mariusz Majewski. We had a special relationship with him in um, my wife and I were getting married as he was he was finishing up getting ordained. We are actually the first wedding that he ever performed after um, um, becoming ordained. So he's been a special part of that journey too. And he taught all those classes, and has been a wonderful advisor as well. Um, but get back to your point about some of those, darker times or the valleys that go with the peaks. No, I'm very, very blessed. I'm extraordinarily blessed. I have valleys like anybody else, but boy, I wouldn't trade mine with anybody. You hear stories about some of these dark times that brought people, and I struggle to come up with an example for that. Um, However, I will say that there are some people that, like I said, in my family, most of my friends I grew up with inside of my church congregation are still very, very close to, still continuing practicing Nazarenes, very, very on fire for their faith. They love God. They love Christ. I'm very happy for them. They seem to be doing very well. Um, Not everybody's like that. I had um, I have an interesting relationship with the Nazarene Church because I do know people who are very close to me that I care very much that have had some difficulty making peace with maybe the oppression that they feel they grew up with. I often like the kid that those who have seen Footloose, John Lithgow's church and Footloose. I think some of my family members look at that movie as almost a documentary where this, person kind of runs the town and is trying to save everybody's soul. And, my parents particularly, and some of my grandparents, my parents particularly grew up under these very, very larger than life men and maybe rebelled against it a little bit,
Sure.
in their older years. And they're both still very faithful people, but they look back on it as, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do this. And it's interesting because I look at it, not to get too sidetracked or in the weeds here, but it breaks my heart to see if my wife hadn't come along and I had not been first exposed to Catholicism, I think something else would have happened. That was God's plan. That's what he had for me. But I think if something else would have come along, I'm so sad to see. I think the Methodists are a tremendous example of this, but I'm so sad to see a lot of the Protestant churches trying to reconcile with the world, trying to connect with the world. And I feel in a lot of ways they're abandoning a lot of, I think they need to be the leaders in the world. I think they don't need to necessarily make peace with it. I mean, people come to the church, they come to God, they come to the people who have been entrusted to be in charge, to be arbiters of the truth, and to see some of that lost. It breaks my heart. And I don't believe the church I grew up in, I don't believe the Nazarene church has done that. I think they've done a good job staying the course. I think they have not gotten this liberal woke culture there. So I think there's still some good things going on there, but I have seen some people who are concerned about, well, there's so much doctrine, there's so much dogma, there's so many rules in the Catholic Church, and it's like, yes, but that is what makes it so beautiful. It's like saying, well, we can't change this. It's not our place to change this. This is God's law. This is God's idea. This is God's design. It's not ours to change because the world's opinion has changed. We're supposed to be the truth. And so I love to see that. And I love to see that the church I grew up in and my faith, spawned from or was born in. But one of the valleys that I do feel are out there is growing up in Boise, Idaho. Obviously, I went to public schools. So I was surrounded by a great deal of the LDS population. I had a lot of Mormon friends, spent a lot of time in their homes. I spent a lot of time around LDS kids. And after high school, shortly like my senior year or shortly after, like the summer after high school, I buddied up with this kid and we ran around and had a great time together. And he was getting ready to go off on his mission. For those of you who don't know, Mormons, men, I believe at 18 and young women, I think at 21, can do a 2-year mission for their church where they go and they're selected for somewhere on the planet to go and spend 2 years on a mission trip. He was preparing for his mission. And I remember talking one night, hanging out and talking about just, having a theological discussion. Got a little heated, but it was still friendly. And I remember we were talking about the truth, about what is the truth, which one is the right one, what is the truth. This is years before I was exposed to Catholicism. And I remember him saying to me, Tyler, do you believe that the church you're in right now, do you believe Nazarenes have a complete grasp of the truth? Do you believe that all the other Protestant churches out there are not? And this is, for some reason, the one that you have chosen or been raised in is the right one. And man, did that strike a chord in me. I remember the following Sunday being in the pew at church and thinking, I mean, just that just really got me thinking, a lot. And I think a lot of that is part of the journey I was on later as well, because part of that looking at putting the mirror back together again is, and I'm getting pretty loose with my dates here, but for 1500 years, there was no Catholic Church. It was simply the Christian Church. It was almost like the Catholic was added onto it to, identify it as this was the original church. Well, the translation's universal, right? So it was, if you were a follower of Christ, if you were a practicer of the Christian faith, you were a Catholic. They, like I said, they maybe didn't necessarily use the word at the time, but a Christian. Only until after the split, the Reformation, and everything else. And every church that has happened since then, even if it does have some of that light and some of that truth, has split off from something else. Church of England split off, the Lutheran Church split off. Then you've got the Methodists later, the Nazarene split off later because they were trying to correct course. Then later on, the Mormons come along and they profess that they have the original doctrine of Christ, and they're trying to redirect us back to that. They're trying to write it. That seems to be always the case, but you look at it and you say, well, 2,000 years of history, 3/4 of it was one unified whole body and holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, and then it's split. You can't see where we're at today without looking at what came prior, and that was the Catholic Church. So I really appreciate my friend doing that, because I don't think that was his intention, but he put a seed in my head back then thinking about that. It's like, no, I don't believe that. But if it's all split up, if I say, well, I believe the Nazarenes are right, but I also believe the Lutherans and the Presbyterians and the Episcopalians, and they all are right too, then why are we split? And I still believe they still have that fraction of the light, or refraction of the light. But the mirror was whole at one time. And now I look at it, and if I was approached by my friend and we got reconnected, of course, life happens after, as you grow up and lost to time. But if I were to run into him again and he were to ask that question to me, and he could say, do you believe what you believe is the one holy, universal, and Catholic truth? I can now say yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I do believe that.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
I was going to say, did he answer the question? Was he implying that what he had was...
Oh, I think we are both. Yeah, I would definitely say, it's 30 years ago, but I would definitely say that we are, it was friendly. It was heated, but it was friendly.
That's good.
But it was friendly. But of course, the idea was we would love to convert each other. Obviously,
Yeah.
But yeah, I do believe he believed that, and I don't know what his journey is now. I mean, who knows? For all I know, he's a deacon somewhere in the Catholic Church. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him for 25 years, 28 years. But
so true. We have no clue.
I think I think it's really interesting that I was thinking about that the other day. We are raising our kids obviously in a Catholic home. We're blessed enough that we can send them to local parochial school. They're not going to have that same experience, right? He hangs out. Obviously, not every kid in the school is a practicing Catholic family, but that was a huge part of growing up. I mean, this and that, and he's got family members that love the Lord that are not part of the Catholic Church, and we have to be very careful about that. We're not saying they're wrong. We're saying they're on that same journey, and just like Dad. And it's really cool because I have that experience. I mean, it's really funny. I've noticed that people that come into the church have often they ask a lot of questions that kind of embarrass cradle Catholics. I don't know the answer to that. Well, why do they? Well, I don't know the answer. I should know the answer to that, but I don't know the answer. Well, let me get back to you on that. It's like, it's like I'm on fire for it now, and I'm excited. I want to know everything. I don't know. So, raising our kids in a family where, a Catholic family, a united Catholic family, but saying, Dad was not always part of this. I mean, he it wasn't really a time where it wasn't a Christian, but it's a different background than Mom. You know what I mean? And it's cool because I think there'll be a time where they may have those questions too. Do I believe this, or do I go along with it because I was raised in it?
Can you repeat
I
that
want to be
again?
that. I want to be that
You cut
source
out
of information.
you cut out there again. Can you repeat that?
Absolutely. Can you hear me? Okay.
It's still going a little in and out, but
Yeah.
try it again.
Eddie, can you hear me better now?
Can you try it one more time?
Yeah, Eddie, can you hear me better now?
No, it continues to reverberate.
Hmm. Okay, hang on. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
But now,
Yeah, can you speak again?
yeah, how about now?
That's better.
Better? Okay. I hope this turns out okay. I'm sorry that it
I think it
keeps
still
fading
will.
in and
I
out.
think it still will. There are just certain things I couldn't make out. So,
Once you're done, I think I figured out what the problem is. Once you're done editing, you let me know. If you want to record again, we can do it again.
okay.
If you're okay, we'll continue.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, pick up
Okay.
you were talking about, I already forgot.
Talk about raising my kids and being the guy that came into the church and versus okay. So I do hope that one day, if they are questioned, do I, when they go through confirmation and they're making that choice for themselves, is this the faith journey for me? Do I believe in this, or was I simply just raised in it and I don't know any
Yes.
difference? Uh, I like to be the example where you say, well, mom was raised in it and she's absolutely in love and on fire with her faith. And dad came from something different, but he found it later. And he is now the same. He's now on fire for it as well. It's not, I'm trying to tell them that mom's wrong. And I can say, you can say, just because you were raised in something doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's okay to change too if you find a better path or closer to the truth. So
No, that's good. And I think of the opportunity for some of us that, so in my case, raised Catholic and didn't know anything from a historical point of view. So then I was similar to that gentleman that I mentioned earlier, where I was only considering, once I was attending a Protestant church, when I wanted to leave that church, I was only thinking in terms of what are my Protestant options,
yeah,
even being cradle Catholic, previously cradle Catholic. I don't know how to state that correctly, but I could not understand the historical argument. It took a while. My point is, we can teach our children that perspective that wasn't mentioned a lot when I was growing up, as far as going back to the roots and
yeah,
understanding the divisions that happen to be time and time again in protest of one thing, in
yeah,
protest of the Catholic Church. And even if
yeah,
someone splits off from someone that split off, ultimately their beef comes back. When I really research these things, it comes back to the protestation of one church, and it's
yeah,
the Catholic Church. And there's this
absolutely.
ongoing, not to say every denomination's open about this, but when you dig, you see that it's all pointing to one thing: the
Yeah,
universal church. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And I mean, there are thousands of denominations out there, which just blows my mind. I can't possibly wrap my mind around that.
sure.
Like, it's only been 2,000 years. I mean, really, do we have enough arguments to have that many splits? But
Yeah,
it's just crazy, blows your mind. But it seems like human nature is kind of geared towards this. I think politics is a great example. Um, there's bad seeds out there. There's
Oh, yeah.
absolutely bad seeds out there. But I think more realistically, it's better to say we live in an incredibly diverse society here in this country, which was founded on a very, very simplistic and basic set of principles. And over time, it has evolved and gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that you've got people on both sides of the aisle, uh, recent presidents, people that have radical different ideas from each other.
Yeah.
But I think really at the heart, most people get into that wanting to make this country a better place. And I think that that's a human condition. And I think that when you do see these splits and new churches happen, I think it is usually a corrective measure, or it's viewed as a
It's
corrective
viewed as a
measure.
corrective measure. Absolutely.
You could even use that argument on Martin Luther. You could say,
Oh, yeah.
I mean that's a whole nother discussion, but you could almost say, now is he doing it correctly? No, I don't think so. But you could almost say the argument is, I see something not happening quite right, and I want to fix it. The Nazarene Church was like that. We're focusing too much on the wrong thing. We want to get back to evangelizing. We want to get back to saving souls. We want to get back to helping the poor. We want to get back to
Sure.
spreading the good word with missionary work, and that is in a more godly life. And the split and the split and the split, and I think all religions are really trying to do that for the most part. I think it's interesting. I'm fascinated by religion. Growing up in the church and understanding the church history and my journey. My Mormon friends, where that I don't know if you know this or not, but the Quran, I don't believe their viewpoint and their story and their testimony and what they're talking is entirely accurate, but they have a great deal to say about Mary. They have a book about Mary in the Quran. It's we talk about the Abrahamic religions, and I think everybody's trying to, although I believe Christianity is the way, I believe that Catholicism is the most perfect practice of Christianity. We're all trying to get to the same place, I think. Of course, I believe ours is tremendously set apart, but that doesn't mean to
Well said.
diminish what I think.
Yeah, agreed.
The Hindus, Jews, and everybody else is trying to get to. We're all trying to get to heaven, I think.
Well, yeah, no, it's a great point, Tyler. The other thing is I notice, so the people that break off, they're pursuing a return, or let's get back to purity, or let's get back to this,
Sure.
the good old days. So you see that in every walk of life, and you talk about the human condition. What happens, specifically in religion, is people will cite that they want to reform something, but they want to do it outside of the thing that they're trying to reform. So that would be my main claim against Luther, and these are the same charges that get levied against the church all the time. Hey, we are now the church. You guys are corrupt and you are abusive. So you have basically you've abdicated, right? And therefore, we are the true church. We are the remnant church. And you start to hear these terms, but again, they're reforming outside of the walls of the very thing that they're saying that they're reforming. So it just happens constantly. You know what I mean? But your point is well taken. It's not as if there's malice behind it. And I'm not saying that. A lot of times it's good intentions, but there's some hastiness a lot of times in those decisions. I would say.
And I definitely see, I think, I wouldn't say it was always like that. I mean, there are a couple of things, throughout history that say, I don't know if the best of intentions were done because of that, but
fair point.
We won't discuss that today. But I do feel, though, that kind of brings us to another point. And I think that, like I said, if it hadn't been 13 years ago, by meeting my wife and talking to the pastor and starting that journey on my own, I think something else would have been a catalyst to bring me here to the church, because and like I said, the faith I grew up in, I don't feel is being infected by this, but I do see, it breaks my heart to see the worldliness coming into the church about, the church needs to get with the times. The church needs to do this. The church this is not considered a bad behavior anymore. We need to reflect that. We need to go see the people where they're at, and we need to connect with the people as they are. And I've been actually listening. This year, I've been doing catechism in a year with Father Mike Schmitz, and it's been wonderful. And I heard something just the other night. I'm a few days behind, but I'm getting caught up. But he was talking about, it's going to be a very broad paraphrase, but the idea is God loves you just as you are. But I think there is two directions you can take with that. Okay. That's your step one. And then there's a comma. And then what's the finishing part of that sentence? And I think Mike, once again, paraphrasing, was God loves you where you are, but he loves you too much to leave you there. And then I think there's a lot of denominations out there now that are saying God loves you the way you are. And so why don't we meet you there? Why don't we conform the church to this way of thinking? And what bugs me about that the most, you know what I mean? I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say I think one of the biggest ones is the LGBT or gay community, an issue that is so prevalent in our culture now. It's very difficult for me because people I really truly care about have been a part of this, and they know where I stand, and it's respectful. I think one side says, I love you too much to leave you like that. And then they are branded as hateful and bigoted and backwards thinking and homophobic or all these horrible words. There are other people that course correct completely the other way. I've seen congregations with pride flags hanging outside of their church doors and such. And it's like, we love you just the way you are because God made you that way. And we will bend our perception and what we teach as doctrine here to reflect what the world now says is, the new way of things. And I just don't understand why it has to be one or the other, because I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. We understand you struggle with this attraction. We understand you struggle with this issue, but that doesn't diminish the love that God the Father that created you has for you. And hearing that thing from Mike Schmitz the other day saying, he loves you too much. You are not, in spite of identity politics that, so rampant now, you are not these group that you cling to so much for your identity. You can still be loved by God. You can still be loved. We can still say this is wrong, but you are still worthy of the love of the Almighty. And we want what is absolutely best for you. And we want what God originally designed for you. And it's not hateful to say that. It's not bigoted to say that.
No, it's not. And I mean, you could apply.
You just don't hear that argument anywhere.
You don't, but you could apply that same logic to anything that you're doing to act out on a disposition or a proclivity or whatever. We don't talk enough about that. Like, imagine someone that truly just says, I want to be affirmed in my fornication. Well, it's the same thing. No, you are loved as a child, but how can you we cannot affirm that because it's a violation of God's law. And true love would be discussing God's law in a healthy, charitable way, right?
Absolutely.
But not shying away from the fact, first of all, we have to speak about the slavery that is inherent in any of those areas, any of those sins, and talk about the true freedom. The people will talk about the license, they have this freedom and they have this openness. That is absolute falsehood straight from hell. to believe, and I mean, that's what I used to believe, like, oh, well, I'm free because I'm not under the thumb of some
Yeah.
religious institution, for example. Well, the enemy loves to obviously
Yeah.
hear that. He wants you to continue to think
Sure.
you're as free can be as you are enslaved to all your vices, right?
It's just interesting, and I think that has helped me with the solidification of my getting back to our original discussion. My own Catholic walk is um, universal truth, and I believe that that is what brought me to the church and where I am today, and that walk and the steps that I have taken. And I'm just immensely grateful for everybody who came beforehand and helped get me here. Um, I have friends who have no faith whatsoever, and I've had wonderful conversations with them, and they've certainly left something with me, and I hope I've done so the same in return. And who knows what may happen someday. Um, but the truth is, I mean, our whole entire world, the entire human race is so, we're absolutely starving for it. We're just absolutely starving for the truth. And that's in everything, this feel good, do what you want. And this is the church and secular society and everything else. It's just absolutely killing us. It's just destroying us. And people are just so hungry for something that is real and tangible. And man, when it gets a hold of them, it's amazing. I've just seen some incredible
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't think we can go in the direction we're going forever. And that was the big component for me about coming into the church,
Very good. And I'd
taking
also
that
say,
next, not abandoning anything, but taking that next step.
yeah,
So,
I think there's a lot of hope in that, that analogy about the broken glass, and speaking
hmm
about truth is at least there's still glass there. So in other words, um, the people that know nothing, they have no background with religion, um,
yeah,
they may find that denomination on the corner that represents a shard of glass, let's say,
hmm
right? That's step one.
yes,
And C.S. Lewis
yes,
talked about that. We cannot discredit, I guess, those churches that are doing the best that they can. They may even have signs out front saying, come this Sunday, we welcome you, join the community, whatever it is. We
yes,
need to pray that those experiences lead to a greater hunger and
absolutely.
let the Holy Spirit do the rest. But yeah, when even though the glass is shattered, what can we do? Can we reverse time? No. So what can we do now? It's like, well, let's pray that that
Yeah.
shard of glass is going to lead them to the complete picture, basically. So, yeah,
I was driving in the car just yesterday afternoon, and around Boise, I'm sure you have seen this. There are little church congregations, evangelical church congregations popping up all over the place. Little
yeah,
strip malls, place goes out of business, and they go in there. And I've walked by them before, like on Sunday afternoon, the gates are open, they're singing, and coffee bar inside, and a lot of people are welcoming you. Welcome. It's just just the friendliest people you ever see. I see them on TV and social media and all kinds of stuff. And we were driving by, and I told my wife, I said, you know what? I just love seeing these little churches popping up absolutely everywhere, because you just have to wonder what seeds are getting planted in the person who woke up, never been in church before in their life, and somehow got curious enough because they walked by and the doors were open and a stranger invited them in and made them feel important or valued or loved or
yes,
noticed for the first time in who knows how long. Who knows where it might go? You know what I mean? Who knows what is getting planted there?
exactly.
And I think it's just really cool.
No,
God knows what he's doing.
God knows what
So,
he's doing. Exactly right. Exactly right. We can't just get a small snapshot and pretend that we know how this all plays out. But you nailed it earlier that everyone deep down is looking for that, and we should be, as Catholics, as good a witness as we can be to help in the journey in some way, shape, or form. We all fall short, but we sure as heck should
Yeah.
keep trying. So, Tyler, thank you for a great discussion. I love that we went off on a few tangents there. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me, and it's just been great chatting with you and kind of reliving some of the stuff I hadn't thought about for a little while.
Yeah, no, it's really, really appreciated. And I also want everyone that watched the episode to think about those in your life that are not Catholic. Maybe you yourself are not Catholic, and maybe just spend a little bit of time thinking about what we were discussing with the fractures. That's not the end of the story. And we should be praying for, I know it's a bad word in certain circles, but my goodness, we should be praying for unity. Unity does not mean compromise of universal truths, but we should be praying for unity. And if you can take that
Absolutely.
to heart, I think, yeah, I'm very, very optimistic. Even the news would have you think otherwise constantly, but we've got to pray for that. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take care and God bless.